Welcome to Human, Not Superhero, a show for educators, where we take back our humanity and take our superhero capes off. This week, we are going to be talking about feeling tired all the time with no energy. And as an educator, I'm pretty sure you can relate. I can relate to this because that used to be me until I went on a journey to a balanced life. But it wasn't always that way. I remember being the last car in the parking lot more than once. I remember bringing work home and doing things on the evenings and weekends. I remember letting Netflix watch me a whole lot more than I was watching it because I was so exhausted and tired trying to be a superhero teacher. But I'm here to tell you that you can take the cape off, you can live a balanced life, and tonight we're going to dive into how to start getting some of your energy back. Oh, the hats you wear. A teacher is expected to wear a lot of hats, right? Do a lot of things that we're not trained to do, that we're not specialized in, that we haven't been properly taught to do. You may have sat in a 1 hour PD on, a new initiative, been read off 20 slides, right? Because that's what they do. They come in, they read off the slides, like all 20 of them, and then they send you on your way. Maybe you might even get a copy of that PowerPoint presentation, and you're expected to be a magician who's able to do that, implement it, do it perfectly all the time. The weight of the world on your shoulders, other specialties put on your shoulders. You're expected to be the jack of all trades. You're expected to be a counselor, therapist, resource provider, social worker, sometimes school nurse. You're expected to be these things, all while still doing what you actually went to school for, which is to educate. How are you all of these things? The jack of all trades that you truly don't have the specialization in, the skills, the knowledge, and the know-how to be. And trying to do all of those things and doing them inefficiently because you aren't the master of that equals being tired. Because the jack of all trades and the master of none equals being exhausted all the time. You can't do it all. You weren't meant to do it all. So we have to change the way that we look at our workload and the expectations that are placed upon us as educators. This is when the glass and rubber ball theory comes into play. And I started using this. It was taught to me by, okay, guys, I don't know what's going on here. Sorry. It's driving me nuts. But this was taught to me by my friend, Sarah. And she gave a teacher tip one time about glass and rubber balls. It was during when the pandemic had first started and things were just like, oh my gosh, what do we do? But that was really an integral tip on how I was able to stop being the jack of all trades and master mine. Because once we master our trade and stop trying to wear all the hats, energy, time, freedom. What is the glass and rubber ball theory? Well, I want you to just stop, take a moment, and think about yourself juggling, right? You're juggling. And in your hands, you have glass balls and you have rubber balls, but you have too much in your hands. And this is a perspective that was brought by Nora Roberts and that my friend Sarah had given. And she said, you know what? This is how that theory goes. If you drop a glass ball, it's going to shatter. And you're never going to be able to put the pieces back together the way they were. But if you drop a rubber ball, it's going to bounce back. And it's going to bounce back again. And it's going to bounce back again. So focus on the glass balls. Because if they fall, we can't put them back together. That was so freeing for me in a way. It was kind of liberating to see the workload in a new perspective. And it was empowering as well. So if you take a sheet of paper and you write glass on one side and rubber on the other, and then you start to list, what are the things that I can't let fall in my job? What are the things that are glass that I can't let shatter? And then what are things that are rubber? They're going to bounce back. Everybody makes them out to be a big deal, but they're really not. They're going to bounce back. Making that list. And on this list, there's no gray area. And that's really hard for teachers because we like to say that there is sometimes, this kind of could be, it's either glass or it's rubber. It's one or the other. So I wanted you to make a list. Like, you don't have steel balls or wooden balls. Those are the great. No, we don't have that. We have glass, we have rubber. That's what we have to work with. And what helped me make my list of glass and rubber balls so that I could really focus in on just being the master of what I signed up to do, which was to teach. And that helped me kind of take off the hats, was to say glass is something that directly impacts my student, period. Rubber is the stuff the adults want, that the adults look at, that the kids don't care anything about. And that was a really good starting point for me on the glass to rubber ball road that helps me to free up my mind, that helped me to be able to take a step forward and getting my energy back. Because when I was focusing on just the glass balls, I could get the rubber ones when I needed to, but I didn't have to constantly be juggling and hoping things didn't fall and freaking out if I dropped a glass ball because I was worried about this rubber ball over here that really had no bearing on what I needed to do. It didn't have a direct impact on my students. So I had to really think about it. And I made a list at first. And then, of course, as time goes on, and you have this perspective as things pop up in the moment, because you kind of trained your brain around glass and rubber, you're able to quickly decide, oh, no, that's rubber. I'll get to it later. Oh, yeah. That's glass. Let me do that right now. And so it was a process. And within this process of glass and rubber balls, because in education, we're told that everything is essential. Everything is important. You can't drop a thing. Everything has to be done. And if you drop something, it's going to be detrimental to students. Not the rubber balls. That's not detrimental. But a lot of guilt is placed on you because, remember, you're expected to be the jack of all trades, but then truly you're left being the master of none. And so adopting the glass and rubber ball theory is a good way forward in a new direction to not only doing what's good for your students, but also yourself and getting balance in your life. But you know what? Sometimes guilt and being unsure comes along with that. And if that's the case for you, you can go to makewaveseducation.com/balance. You can download your recipe for a balanced teacher life from burnout to brighter days ahead, because with that, there's a whole section on dealing with the guilt that comes along with setting boundaries, doing something new, and pushing against the status quo. Because once you really start to focus on glass and rubber balls, you're pushing against the status quo. I hear you, but, and I can hear your buts right now because I heard them too. I heard them a lot. And when I started to go on this journey, like I said, I learned about this theory during COVID. And I was a hybrid teacher. We did Zoom and in person at the same time. And one of the expectations was that every lesson was recorded or pre-recorded for students who couldn't make it to a Zoom meeting, so that they could go back and watch the content. And full transparency, I remember one Saturday morning, I was recording for the week. It took forever. And I was on a recording. Somebody started the microwave, like somebody in my house right now is using the microwave and I can hear it. It's driving me crazy, but that doesn't matter. I'm gonna let that go. But at that moment, all I could think was, oh my gosh, my students and whoever watches this is going to hear the microwave in the background. My whole recording's ruined. I had to hit stop. And I was so frustrated because I was tired. It was a Saturday. It was, I woke up at 6. I had been working. It was 1 o'clock. I had worked the night before doing all the other stuff, all the nights. And now I'm trying to do these recordings for the week for my kids. And I snapped at whoever it was in my house at the time who was using the microwave. Like, I snapped at them. And I was like, stop using the microwave. I have recordings to do and I don't want to do this all day. And I was so frustrated because I was tired. And that was kind of a wake-up call. I hear you, but guess what? So then I heard about this glass and rubber balls, and then I thought back to that moment, and I thought that wasn't fair to my family. Number one, that wasn't fair to myself. And those whole you have to record the lessons was a rubber ball, even though they said it was required. Because in full honesty, when I stopped and thought about it, every single one of my students came to Zoom, except one. And that one that needed the videos that I was sitting here snapping at my family for, never went and watched the videos and did the work anyway. So why was I doing it? Rubber ball, it can bounce. If they want to come back later and say, you know what, we need a video on this, then I'll make it later. But honestly, it really wasn't affecting any of my students. It was only affecting me and my house and my energy, because that student did not watch the videos that I was actually recording it for, because everybody else came to the Zoom and got the content with me live or was in class with me. It was a rubber ball at that point, required or not. It didn't make a difference. I used to meet with the other student at other times, like that worked for their family outside of the other Zoom times. So basically, it wasn't really necessary, even though I was told, well, that's necessary. So it became a rubber ball, and you go, that does affect your students. They can't watch it. Nobody was watching it. Nobody was watching it. I was literally spending nights and weekends making recordings for something nobody ever watched. So I want you to think about that when we're thinking about the glass and rubber balls. How many of you, raise your hand, have to fill out a whole bunch of Google documents with data? How often are they looked at? Are they looked at exactly when you say? Are they reviewed exactly when you say? They're not, guys. And just to tell you, they're not. I used to work on the other side. Yep, I was on the other side. I was on the admin side. And they're like, hey, it's due in your document by Friday, and something erupted in your classroom that really actually needed your attention besides that Google sheet, and you shouldn't have to do work after work. And guess what? The admin team was so busy doing other things. Do you think they actually had time to go back and look at every single teacher's data? No, not at that moment. Now, if you're going to have a data meeting, just make sure it's done before the data meeting. You know, all of this, get it done the Friday of, so that we can review it before we meet. Nobody's reviewing it before you meet. They're just not. And if you're an admin out there that is reviewing it before your teachers meet, you're awesome. Thank you. Because a lot of times we're given deadlines to do stuff that rubber ball, nobody's looking at it. And if we're going to be real, let's be real. They're not looking at that. We have like a data sheet for the entire school year. You know, when it's looked at next year for the teachers next year to see where our kids ended this year. We don't really do anything with it. So it's really not on the list of my priorities, because it's not a glass ball, it's a rubber ball. I'll get to it when I get to it. And that's kind of the mindset you have to get into. What is glass and what is rubber? What actually, filling out that sheet's doing nothing for my kids. It does nothing for my students. Yes, I call my students my kids. So it's not impacting them in any way. I already know the data. I'm the one in the classroom adjusting to the data. If somebody else needs to look at the data and it's not there, I'll put it in. Or I'll get to it when I get to it. And I know that's probably unpopular teacher something, but to admin, not to teachers. Teachers are probably like, heck yeah, because it's just a waste of my time, because I know what my kids need. Yes, you know what your kids need. There's so many things to fill out that, I mean, that's just a whole nother rabbit hole that we can go down, and we're not going to go down that now. But it takes away from your balance, and it takes away from your energy. So when you're thinking of your glass and rubber balls, and you hear the little word "but" come out of your mouth about where it should go, well, I really think it's rubber, but ask yourself this question: is this directly going to impact my students right now, in this moment? Or is it something for grown-ups? Because a lot of stuff we do, guys, is for grown-ups. Think about that. So that's how I started. Is this for the grown-ups or the kids? Kids, glass, grown-ups, rubber. That was how I simplified it for myself. You do with it as you will. This is something that does take some practice, but you're not alone. You can go to makewaveseducation.com/balance. Go get your recipe for a balanced teacher life. There's going to be tools and resources within that to help move you in the direction of balance. Because being tired all the time, not having energy, because you're asked to put on a whole bunch of hats and be the jack of all trades and master of none, because that drains your energy, that's not what your students need. That's not what your students deserve, and that is not what you deserve. Because, guys, a rested educator is an effective educator. Just like that morning when I snapped at my family for turning on a microwave because they actually live in my house, and I was trying to record something on a Saturday. I'm so glad those days are over. If you're not rested, you're not effective either. I was not rested that day, so I wasn't effective for my family. And if you go through and you're trying to juggle the glass and the rubber balls and be superhuman and not let any of it fall, you're going to be tired all the time. And then you're not going to be effective for your students. So let them drop. Let those rubber ones drop. They'll bounce back. You're going to have more energy, which is going to make you better for your students. It's going to make you better for yourself. It's going to make you better for all of the other things that are in your life, having that energy. In the next episode, we're going to talk about why we make excuses and not take care of ourselves. Because guilt, gaslighting, and myths are a huge part of our occupation. And even as you work on your glass and rubber balls this week, you're probably going to kind of come into some excuses subconsciously that you're not even aware of. But we're going to talk about that next week, and we're going to dive into that, because a lot of times we make excuses for not having a balanced life without even realizing it. And it's time for us to get past those things so that we can get to a more balanced life, because we are human, not superheroes. And that is what makes us awesome. And as I always like to say, it is never too late to start a new story. So this week, when you're writing in your story, in your chapters of your book, I want you to implement the glass and rubber ball theory and see, does that give you some of your time back, some of your energy back? Start that new story, write that new chapter. I'll see you next week.